Just gonna get.
She started. Yeah, just started. Yeah. Oh well.
Okay, we are live. 362.
Oh no, on page one.
Well, you're different. You're different. You're unique.
Unique.
Okay, so in the lessons in Tanya, page 362, chapter 27. You come to someone, come to the rabbi and say, you got a problem. The rabbi stops you before you even say what the problem is. It says, some people call it a problem. Some people call it a challenge. Some people call it an opportunity. It's a paradigm that when we assume we have a problem, is it really a problem? A problem assumes that it's a difficulty that's sort of out to get us, that it's a difficulty that if I can't push it out of my way will lead me to negative emotions. An opportunity or a challenge is meant to strengthen me, to bring me to a higher place, to a better place. So we all have problems. The question is, how can we take the problem and change our perspective on it and turn it into an opportunity and a challenge? The last chapter we started the section on joy and how it's important in our lives, especially if we want to serve Hashem properly, to be joyous. And we dealt with the problems that usually interfere with joy, which are both material issues that we're dealing with and spiritual things that we've dealt with in the past that don't make us too proud of our past. And we discussed it there. We have to set aside special times for that, to deal with it. It's not, if it pops up middle of the day, then it's just there to distract us and to pull us down. However, since this book is here to teach us how to serve God properly, we have to deal with other types of problems that may arise. And one of these types of problems is problems in the present. So 2 weeks ago, in the last chapter, we discussed what happens when my past comes back to haunt me. So, I'm expecting that I've turned the page, and now I remember. Oh, but I'm really the person who did this, that, and the other. Okay, but we're all looking for peace and quiet. Even Jacob, right, we're going to learn about in a couple of weeks. He wanted to live peaceful. Yeah, he just finished running away from Esav, running away from Lavan. So it says he wanted to sit in peace and quiet. What happens? Joseph is kidnapped, or he thought was killed. The problem is it's very difficult to live peacefully when we're living through life. Life in general brings us many challenges, not just spiritual challenges, also material challenges. And in the spiritual world, our evil inclination is always pulling us to do things that we know we shouldn't do, that we don't want to do, etc. And even in the physical, material realm, we have issues in marriage, with children, even in the world, the terrorism or my job or politics, whatever it is that comes in my way and brings me down a notch. I need to learn how to get rid of all of those negative emotions. Otherwise, I can't be joyous, can't be happy. So the Alter Rebbe is going to flip everything on its head and teach us how every challenge, every issue that comes up, every problem that comes up in either area is really a challenge. And he's going to explain to us logically why it's a challenge. In other words, it's easy to say, oh, it's not a problem, it's a challenge. Yeah, you have to go to the hospital every day for a year and tell me it's not a problem. Now, the Rebbe is going to give us a thought process, how any problem that we face, we could look at it and change it into a challenge and an opportunity. So let's start from the spiritual, and then we'll go to the physical. You pass by someone's wallet sitting on the floor. You pick it up and you see there's $1,000 cash inside, plus a whole bunch of IDs and credit cards. So you know who it belongs to. And you're tempted to take the $1,000 cash and leave the wallet there. You know, if you take the wallet to return it, you can't take the $1,000 cash. So you're tempted to take the cash and leave the wallet. That temptation to some people, or to many people, will make them feel really bad. Why? Because I know I shouldn't be doing this. And I expect of myself not even to be tempted to do it. The fact that I'm tempted to do it and that I'm considering a possibility of trying to do it in a way that no one will see me and not get caught means that I'm inclined to steal. How is that supposed to make me happy? How am I not supposed to be sad about the fact that my first initial thought when seeing the wallet wasn't, let me find the owner? Doesn't that mean there's something a little stale or rotten inside? So the Alter Rebbe says no.
No, it could just mean you're considering all alternatives.
I know, but the fact that that's a valid alternative is to many people would be depressing.
I agree.
So the Alter Rebbe says no, and he gives an interesting calculation. The Torah says, in the Ten Commandments it says this, but really in the Ten Commandments it's referring not to money, it's referring to people, because the Ten Commandments are capital offenses. Stealing money isn't a capital offense. Kidnapping a person is. But regardless, in the Ten Commandments it says do not steal. Let's take, in Leviticus it says do not steal, again referring to money. It says do not steal. When are you able to fulfill that mitzvah? 24/7 that you're not stealing, you're fulfilling that mitzvah? No.
When you're tempted.
Oh, when you're tempted.
The temptation that creates the opportunity.
Very good. So remember we spoke about one of the last couple of weeks, we spoke about the story of the two brothers that were dancing in prison because they couldn't daven because the pail was there.
Yeah.
In other words, a negative commandment can only be fulfilled if the temptation is there. If the temptation isn't there, there's no commandment. That in the Shema, the third paragraph of the Shema, in the paragraph with the tzitzit. So we say a verse there, V'lo taturu acharei levavchem v'acharei einechem. You should not turn after your hearts and eyes. In other words, you look out in the world and you see many temptations and many things, and your heart desires them. You shouldn't turn after it. When do you fulfill that mitzvah? If a person doesn't have a warm heart, he's cold-headed, and he doesn't get excited by the things he sees. He fulfills a mitzvah when he doesn't follow his heart and eyes. His heart and eyes don't even want the things he sees. That's not a mitzvah. The mitzvah is when your heart is full of temptation, and instead of acting upon that, you actively try to turn away. You try to take your mind off of it. You try to think about something else. So when can you fulfill the mitzvah, do not steal, just like putting on tefillin, giving charity, making kiddush, eating in a sukkah, when you're tempted to steal. If you're not tempted to steal, you're not fulfilling that mitzvah. So you're faced with this challenge, with this problem, with this difficulty that you see the $1,000, and legally, halachically, you have to return it, and you're tempted to steal it. That usually, naturally brings the person down a notch. The Rebbe says, think about it for a second. Now you have an opportunity to do a mitzvah you'd never be able to do otherwise. This is an opportunity for joy. Yeah, when Rabbi Akiva was killed by the Romans, his flesh was raked with metal rakes, and he was dying. And he said Shema Yisrael with a smile on his face. And his students that were standing there said in Hebrew, that far, you're going to smile? Like, you got to be crazy. So Rabbi Akiva said that my whole life, I wondered, when will I have the opportunity to fulfill the mitzvah of sanctifying my God's name, of giving my life for God? And now I've got the opportunity. In other words, what was he saying? He was saying, I'm not upset at the Romans. The Romans aren't hurting me. They're giving me the opportunity to do a mitzvah. That's a perspective change that any person can have. By the way,
there's in sales training classes, they teach you things like if life presents you with lemons, and make lemonade.
Lemonade, right?
Yeah,
Exactly.
This is
Exactly.
what we're talking about.
Actually the word for test, like a test challenge, obstacle that's a test that's there to help you grow. You know what that word is in Hebrew? Nisayon. Nisayon is a test. The root of the word nisayon is the same root as the word nes, which could mean a miracle, but nes also means a tall stick, a tall pole. And it's explained that this is the purpose of a test, to elevate you, to help you get higher to a place you couldn't have otherwise gotten without this test.
It's referred to like the 10 tests of Abraham.
Yeah, any test, but those tests in the desert, there were tests, many different tests. Okay, this is in spiritual, in the Jewish spiritual realm. The same thing is in the physical realm. You have an obstacle course, or you have a competition. Yeah, when an athlete has to train on an obstacle course, do they see the obstacle course as a problem, or as a challenge to help them grow? Yeah, it's like they say the story. This multimillionaire comes to see the boot camp for the Marine Corps. Yeah, and he sees all the obstacles that the Marines have to overcome. He says, "I'll donate a couple $1 million to get a bulldozer and come and knock all these obstacles down." And they're looking at him, they're like, what in the world are you talking about? I just heard something fascinating yesterday, that a psychiatrist that deals with a lot of veterans, and he was fascinated by the boot camp, by the training, because everyone always speaks about the horrors of what they have to go through during boot camp. And he dealt with a lot of veterans, and no one ever complained about the boot camp. They always had fond memories of it. Many people, they go to the army to make them into men, and the boot camp does that. Why? It's a fascinating thing. Why? Because although they're treated like garbage, they're told you're going to fail, you can't do it, you're a loser, and they have to go through a grueling training, they're not kicked out. The instructor can call him a loser and a failure, and the next day he's there waiting for him in the morning to see if he can do another day, if he can pass the test, if he can get to the end. In other words, just by the fact that they're not, that you address and approach the challenge as a challenge, not as a problem, not as an excuse to get you out of here, but as a challenge to overcome, to see if you're worthy of going to the next step. It changes the whole perspective. So any obstacle we bump into in life is there to help us go to a higher level, to help us get to a place we couldn't have otherwise gotten to on our own. And if we just look at it that way, we wouldn't have any negative emotions from the challenges we face, from the problems we face, because they're not problems, they're challenges. Sometimes it's hard to find it. A person ends up in the hospital with an illness. It's hard to find the challenge or the opportunity there, but it's there. How do I know? Those people, when they come out of the hospital, they come out stronger. They come out feeling that they can overcome more than what they thought they can overcome before they went in. So here, the Alter Rebbe is going to start, and he's going. It's almost like it's a continuation from the last chapter. Yeah. Here we're going to talk about challenges that come in, current challenges that I'm facing now. The Alter Rebbe is going to use an interesting language here that's going to show us how he's going to turn everything on its head. Let's start on 27. If, however, his sadness does not stem from anxiety over sins that he has committed, in other words, in the past, but from the fact that sinful thoughts and desires enter his mind. So if they're from the past, what did we say last week? Say, okay, I hear you. Let's set a time, nighttime Shema, once a week, whenever it is. We'll deal with it then. We'll make an appointment. We'll make a meeting. We'll deal with all these issues then. But now, what do we do about the things that are in the sinful thoughts that are in my head now? So if these thoughts occur to him not during his service of God, but while he is occupied with his own affairs and with mundane matters of life, so technically they're not disturbing the service of God, right? He's in the middle of working, middle of changing a tire, and he starts to have sinful thoughts. Yes. So he should, on the contrary, be happy in his plan. The word that's used in Hebrew is adarabba. On the contrary, it goes upside down. Instead of looking at it as a problem, as a difficulty that makes me sad, upside down. On the contrary, the whole paradigm. Be happy in his life. For although these sinful thoughts enter his mind, he averts his attention from them. And by averting his mind from sinful thoughts, he fulfills the injunction, you shall not follow after your heart and after your eyes, by which you go astray. Now, who is this verse talking? The above verse surely does not speak of tzaddikim, referring to them, God forbid, as going astray, because a tzaddik doesn't even have improper thoughts inside. Doesn't even have an improper idea. But, so who's the verse talking about? Verse being like himself of the intermediary of the struggle, like myself, whose mind is to enter erotic thoughts, whether of an innocent or otherwise. And when he averts his mind from them, then he fulfills this injunction. Yeah, because otherwise, if you don't have these thoughts, then you're not fulfilling the mitzvah. Our sages have said, one passively refrains from sin is rewarded as though it is actively performing the mitzvah. Yeah. So if I have an improper thought and I avoid it as if I perform a positive command. Consequently, because of this, rejoice in its compliance with the injunction, just as he does an actual positive precept. Okay. So this is a thought process that's like the story about the two brothers. Also another story. There's a Chabad, there's a shliach in Belgium. Rabbi for Israeli there was once a Jew that came to Belgium, and he was becoming closer and closer religious, to Jewish Christ, and Jewish Christ started observing moments. One day he told the rabbi once he had reached a level basically he was doing a religious one thing more. He had a girlfriend, and she wasn't Jewish, and he couldn't see a way to get married to her. And that didn't fit with the Jewish lifestyle. He couldn't get out of it. Many different rabbis tried to magnify how terrible a sin it is, how big of a deal it is, press upon the importance of separating. He couldn't get him. He was stuck. So he suggested he go see the rabbi. Okay, so schedule the trip to New York, trip to America, trip for him. Went to the rabbi, and he came on Sunday. $100 to give out to charity, and he told the rabbi his problem. And he has an Jewish can't let go. He was expecting the rabbi to lay it out. And the rabbi said, I'm jealous of you. That totally threw him back. And the Rebbe saw his hesitation. The Rebbe explained that. The Rebbe said, it says in the Torah, God gives every person a challenge. How doesn't give you more than you can handle. In other words, God believes you're able to willpower, the ability to overcome this challenge. God never gave me the challenge. In other words, you have powers that I don't have. Now, that wasn't for that challenge. That was just saying, look, if you look at it as a challenge, that means that you have the ability to overcome it. And that was all he needed. And although I never heard the story from that person happen to him, I've heard the story from others who have heard the story and found them to break up a connection that would have otherwise led so it's a paradigm shift that seeing a problem as a challenge can change the whole perspective. Show a person capabilities and their abilities that they didn't believe they had. Okay. she probably goes into conversion, proper conversion has to be because the person wants to convert. Because I want to marry Jewish, they're not Jewish, so you convert them on pay. It's meaningless. It has to be a person. Conversion has to be a person. Can't see his life other than being Jewish. Otherwise, it's just a piece of paper. It doesn't. It's not even. You wouldn't get a conversion from the reason that the person wanted to convert was from there, or any other superficial reason. Says when Mashiach comes, the moment comes. In Solomon's times, they didn't accept converts because the Jewish people ruled the world. So any person that wanted to convert, you were going to convert. They want to convert because they wanted to become Jewish, or because it was the things to do. They didn't accept converts. Everyone's going to want to convert. But why are they going to want to convert? Because it's good to be a Jew. It's good to be a Jew. That's not conversion. That's not conversion. It's not anyway. There was a soldier, that came to the rabbinic court, to the military court, Badin, one of the first weeks of the war, wanted to convert. He was going through a conversion, like a couple months into the conversion process, but it takes time. And he said he's going to the front lines, he's going to go into Gaza, and he very likely will die. He wants to die a Jew. By the end of the day, he was converted. Because when someone says that, they're not going to hear on. Someone says that in the olden days. Today you have a year or 2 year process for conversion. You want to make sure the person's sincere. I've unfortunately seen families convert, and after a couple of years, it's just too much. That's why they make it. They stretch it out 2 years to see, are you able to hold on a routine for 3 years? That's challenging. In the olden days, they didn't make you do that. You didn't have to learn the mitzvahs before you converted. You said you could want to convert, and then you learned, and everything you learned, you did. Why? Because then it was dangerous to convert. You could have been killed if you were converted. So just by saying you wanted to convert, you were putting your life in danger. Someone's not going to do that superficially. You were able to trust them. When it's the convenient thing to do, and the in thing to do, a lot of times you just do it, just when it feels good, and then years later, unfortunately, side note. Okay, so till now we addressed the sadness that can come to the person, or the lack of joy that comes to the person because of the excessive thoughts that are in his head. But then there's something else, and this digs a little down deeper to the core. And I think there may be some parallel in today's psychology or other things, where a person becomes despondent by the fact that they thought they've overcome something, and then they realize they haven't. This can happen with an addiction. It can happen with any type of imperfection you may think you have, that you think you've overcome. So a person has lived 20, 30 years not having the urges to whatever substance they were addicted to. They lived 30 years, from a Jewish perspective, not having temptation to eat a cheeseburger or to work on shops. They lived 30 years without getting angry and hitting or whatever type of negative tendency the person had. They've overcome. They live a different lifestyle now. And then one day they're walking down the street and they feel themselves being tempted all over again, just as if it was 30 years ago. In that moment, that can create an inner turmoil. If you're not prepared properly, if you haven't trained for this, it can create an inner turmoil. Why? Because it's not just, it's beneath me to happen. I worked so hard on this, and I thought I grew out of it. I thought it's not a problem anymore. And it turns out I'm just as I was 30 years ago. Yeah? Unless a person works on this, you're walking down the street and that temptation falls into your head, that's a type of disappointment that could totally break a person. What have I done for the last 30 years if I have the same temptation I had 30 years ago? Where does this disappointment come from? How can a person not realize that 30 years, 20 years, 5 years. They overcame themselves. Why is that not a good enough victory? Okay, fine, you have to deal with it now again, but that throws in the garbage the last 5, 10, 20 years? Where does this come from that a person can become so disappointed in himself? Where does this disappointment come from? You always say this, or I think we discussed this recently. Unrealistic expectations. Right? You always talk about to lower. You expect nothing, and then everything. You expect the worst, and plan for the worst.
Plan for the worst, and you're
never going to be disappointed. So if a person is disappointed, where does that come from? It comes from unrealistic expectations. In other words, a person's disappointed 30 years after. But the last time he hit his someone, his spouse, his child out of anger. He had anger management issues. It's been 30 years since he acted on his anger, and now he did it again. His expectation was that he changed himself, that he's no longer an angry person. He can no longer give in to his inclination of anger. That's an unrealistic expectation. If that would be a realistic expectation, he would have outgrown it. He didn't. In other words, he didn't change who he is. It's almost impossible to change who you are at the core. And if you're the type of person that can get angry and hit someone, then you always have to be wary of that. The moment you think you're not, you can grow out of that. And I'm not talking about specifically, sure, there are some people that have anger management issues that it's not really anger management. They can really outgrow it. I'm not the authority to speak about it. I'm just speaking hypotheticals. The Mishnah says in Ethics of Our Fathers that one of the ways to achieve wisdom is to know your place, to recognize your place. Chassidus speaks a lot about knowing that you have to know, just like a person always likes to know their advantages, you also have to know the things you lack in. Or the other way around. Some people, they love to focus on the things they can't do. You always have to focus. You also have to focus on things you can do. A person has to have a realistic picture on who and what they are and what they're capable of.
So I'm thinking about my dependency on alcohol.
Yeah.
And one of the things I learned was, I have to live now. I have to live right now. I can have a drink tomorrow, but I can't have one today.
Because you know.
Because I know where it's going to be.
In other words,
I know exactly where
right?
I'm not a recovered alcoholic. I'm a
Recovering. In other words, you have realistic expectations of yourself.
Realistic expectations, and it makes so much sense, and it gets transferred to the rest of your life. It gets transferred to how you see the world and how you respond to it.
There was a chassid of the third Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek. He once came to him, and he said he doesn't know what to do. Everyone's always stepping over him. In other words, everyone's always like getting in his way and putting him down. So they told you spread yourself out in the whole shul, so wherever anyone steps, it's on you. You get involved in every issue and everything. So anytime someone has an opinion, it's going to involve you because you put yourself everywhere. That's a certain egotistical view that I'm capable of something that, if I looked honestly, I would realize I'm not. There's a joke. It's a little dark joke, but there was the custom is that after a person passes, so the children say Kaddish, and some of the custom is the children are the chazan for a whole year, for 11 months. While they're saying Kaddish, they also lead the service. So there was once a guy, his father died, so he wanted to be chazan. The problem was his voice was horrendous. And the community really they didn't know if they should laugh or cry every time he was chazan, and they really wanted him out. So they went to the rabbi and to try to get this guy to stop being chazan. So the guy told the rabbi, "What should I do? My father died. I need to be the chazan." So the rabbi said, "Your father made you an orphan, not a chazan." In other words, just because you think now, I'm not saying it's a joke, yeah. But because when do people really canter away? Shabbos and holidays. Shabbos and holidays, we don't lead the service. So it's obviously a dark. But we have to recognize, and why don't we recognize what we're capable of? It's from the ego. In other words, from an inflated ego, an ego that's inflated with, when we say hot, it's inflated with air because air has no substance. You think you're this tall, but it's all air. It's air that puts you up. It's not real. So what's the result? The result is I'm disappointed in myself. Why am I disappointed in myself? Because I have expectations that aren't realistic. Why? Because I have ego. Because I have an inflated ego. So what's the solution? Modesty. What does modesty mean? Modesty means recognize your place. Don't put yourself out there in a way that exposes yourself in a way that's unrealistic. Recognize your boundaries, your place, what's good for you and what's not. Recognize what you're capable of and what you're not capable of. The best thing you could do to such a person is help him understand what he's really capable of. So, what happens in spirituality? When a person, 30 years, he's kept kosher, and then he walks down the street and he's tempted for a cheeseburger, and he's disappointed. He's disappointed because, what have I done for the last 30 years? Where does that disappointment come from? He expected to have uprooted that temptation from himself, which basically means he expected to be a tzaddik. A tzaddik can uproot their evil inclination, right? But the average person can't be a tzaddik. So you have an expectation of being a tzaddik, you're deluding yourself. You're a baby. Baby is a struggler. Someone who's going to struggle till the day he dies. Some days the struggle will be easier. Some days it won't be as apparent. Some days it'll be harder. But the expectation that I should be a tzaddik is unrealistic. That comes from a place of ego. Now, you would think usually it's important to have high expectations, right? That will bring me higher. Right? If I have low expectations, I won't get anywhere. The point isn't to have low expectations. The point is to have realistic expectations. You always want to strive to get a little higher than you think you can get to, but not to a whole different world. Yeah, if you're 5'1" and you have an expectation to play in an NBA team, try something else, or else you're gonna be disappointed. You're gonna be full of disappointments, right? But the moment we realize that we can't be a tzaddik and that we're always going to struggle, so when I face a struggle, even if it's a very immoral, it's something that I'm shocked, I'm tempted to do. Don't be so shocked. You're not a tzaddik. Get over your shock. Realize this is an opportunity to grow. It's an opportunity to do a mitzvah. You're facing this challenge. Avert your eyes, avert your heart, do something else, and you've just fulfilled the mitzvah. The Rebbe is going to tell us that the disappointment, the depressive thoughts about where you are, that comes from ego. That's all because you expect of yourself something you're not capable of. Okay, so let's continue. We're at page 364. And again, he uses the same word in the ego, v'adarabah. On the contrary, upside down. What you thought should have brought you depression, the opposite. V'adarabah? Yeah, probably Rabba, which means greater, and Adarabba is like turning it over. It's even greater if you look, but I'm not sure. Rabba would be like greater, right? Adarabba means like turn. Yeah, I'm not sure. You have to look it up. Such sadness is due to conceit. For he does not know his place, and that is why he is distressed, because he has not attained the level of a tzaddik. And if he would be a tzaddik, to whom such foolish thoughts surely do not occur. But that's deceitful. For were he to recognize his station, that he is very far from the rank of tzaddik, and would that he be a Beinoni and not a Rasha for even a single moment throughout his life. That the word here is halavai. You know what halavai means? I wish. I wish. And would that he be a Beinoni, were he to recognize he's very far from the rank of a tzaddik. And would that he be a Beinoni, not a Rasha, for even a single moment throughout his life. In other words, this is what he should be striving for at present, rather than vainly desiring to be a tzaddik. Reb Hillel of Parish, who was one of the earlier Hasidim, he said that before he became a Chassid, he thought he was a tzaddik. And when he started learning Hasidus, he realized tzaddik for sure he isn't. Halavai, he would be a Beinoni. In other words, that he would always be successful in his struggles. A Beinoni will always struggle, but a complete Beinoni is someone who's always successful in his struggle, always overcomes his struggles. The average person, sometimes we're successful, sometimes we aren't. But a Beinoni is someone who struggles. So if he would recognize his place, that he'd be lucky if he was a Beinoni for one moment, then surely this is the due measure of the Beinonim and their task. What's the purpose of a Beinoni? To subdue the evil impulse and the thought that rises from the heart to the mind, and to completely avert his mind from it, repulsing it as it were with both hands, as explained above in chapter 12. This is what he really should be focused on and really should be doing. Every repulsion of his thought from his mind. In other words, so during the day you could be faced with, let's just take a number, let's take 100 temptations you're faced with during the day, yeah? So every repulsion of this thought from his mind, every time you push it out of your mind, Sitra Achara, which is the klipa, the negativity, the impurity, is suppressed here below in this world. And since the arousal from below, in our case, the initiative of the Beinoni in suppressing the Sitra Achara, produces a corresponding arousal above, the Sitra Achara above, in the supernal world, the root of the Sitra Achara of this world, which soars like an angel, is also suppressed. Huh? Yeah? Oh, sorry. So which soars like an eagle is also suppressed. Thus, realizing the verse, though you soar aloft like an eagle, I will yet bring you down from there, says God. In other words, just because you're soaring, talking to the Sitra Achara, don't think you're there forever. I can take you down a notch. In other words, if I have an opportunity to do 100 mitzvahs a day, every mitzvah I do is its own battle. The war is to try to do as many mitzvahs as possible. But every battle I win is a battle I won. The fact that I lost the next 5 battles doesn't take away from the battle I won. And the fact that I lost 5 battles doesn't mean I'm going to lose the 6th. I still can win the 6th. Each thing is individual. Because that's the purpose of the Beinoni, to struggle in each individual struggle that arises there. Indeed, the Zohar in Parshas Teruma extols the divine satisfaction that occurs when the Sitra Achara is subdued here below. Hereby God's glory rises above all, more than by any other praise, and this ascent is greater than all else. In other words, where does God get his greatest pleasure from? When we subdue the Sitra Achara down here. Tzaddik can't subdue the Sitra Achara. Tzaddik doesn't have the temptations. So God gets greater pleasure from the struggle of the Beinoni than from that of the Tzaddik. Actually, I don't think we brought this example yet. We're going to bring it later. I think so. No, actually, maybe we did in chapter. We may have discussed this, the two different types of flavor, the good naturally sweet flavor, and then the flavor that's created by mixing in different bitter spices. Yeah? So you have 2 things that are flavorable. Something that's naturally sweet. That's a tzaddik, naturally sweet. Then when you take flavors that are bitter in themselves, that conflict with each other, and you put them together in a harmonious way, then you make it very tasty food. Yeah? And which food does a person get more pleasure from? The naturally sweet one or the savory one that was created from a whole bunch of things that individually are too bitter to eat on their own? Usually the savory one. That brings the person more satisfaction. You want to do this, fine, but what brings the person, when you sit down for a meal, you eat a sweet meal or a savory meal? Where are you getting more satisfaction, more pleasure from? A savory meal. Again, it's 2 types of pleasure. I'm not saying that the sweet meal isn't pleasurable. It is pleasure, but it's a different type of pleasure. Why? Because this pleasure is one of surprise. It's not a natural pleasure. You didn't expect it. When you go watch a show, which jokes do you laugh at? Which tricks do you smile at? The ones you knew the ending for, or the ones you didn't? The ones you could predict what's going to happen, or the ones you didn't see coming? Those are the ones that bring you more joy. Does that mean it's a better trick than the other thing? Not necessarily, but you weren't expecting it. So the tzaddik is naturally sweet. The expectation is he's going to do what he's supposed to do. So it brings Hashem pleasure, but it's a sweet pleasure. It's one type of pleasure. But the greatest pleasure for Hashem is when we bend Sitra Achad, we overcome that temptation. That's the greatest pleasure that Hashem can get. So instead of sitting there all depressed that you're not a tzaddik because you think I should be perfect, stop the expectation. Recognize you're a baby, but also recognize the ultimate pleasure Hashem gets is from your act of submission, of submitting the Sitra Achad, and not the tzaddik's naturally sweet service. Again, it's different types of satisfaction, different types of pleasure. Right. Like Roger said, sometimes you'll eat a savory meal and you still want that sweet dessert after. There's no question that it has a place in a person's palate and in a person's life, that type of, right? When you have a child or a student that's naturally good. So there's a certain type of satisfaction and pleasure that you get from that. And no one's going to say, I'd rather have a kid that's entirely savory. There's something beautiful and satisfactory in having a sweet kid, right? But it's a different category. It calls within the person a deeper satisfaction and pleasure when the child who he least expects it makes it in life, gets the A on the test, or does something unexpected.
I think that's probably one of the reasons why we are endowed with 6 different types of taste buds.
Yeah.
You know, to experience all of these flavors, whether it's the salty, the savory, the sweet, the bitter. You know, I think it's 5, maybe 5
Don't lose yourself.
So this is very helpful in allowing me not to be sad or not to be depressed. Like, who am I? What have I fallen? What have I become? There's no hope for me. No, there's hope. This is perfect. This is exactly where you're supposed to be. This is what you're supposed to be doing. But how is this supposed to make me happy? Wouldn't I be happy if I was just a tzaddik and didn't have to struggle? Wouldn't I be happier if I didn't have to work so hard in the kitchen, mixing and adding and adding this and adding that to try to get the perfect flavor? Wouldn't I be better off if I just baked? Right? Usually baking is the sweeter end of things, although you could bake savory too. But yeah, can't I just make something sweet instead of how is this supposed to make me happy in the fact that I have this struggle that's never ending?
You struck on a thread at the beginning.
Yeah.
So it's about the guy who went to the Rebbe and the Rebbe said, I'm jealous. And that's, if you think of it in those terms, you really don't leave yourself much of a choice. It's easier. I think it's easier to recognize that you're not perfect than it is to try to be perfect.
Oh, in other words, what I think you're saying is, or what I hear you saying is that, and you see this today very, very clearly. There are people that have anything a person can ever want, and they commit suicide. They're depressed. Why?
They're profoundly unhappy.
Why?
Because if they have one million, they want 2 million.
Why? But why?
There's I think there's this innate thing that you're always striving to do better, to get better, you know, etc. If I were a rich man, right?
Yeah.
You know, he wasn't satisfied with what he had.
I know that's human nature. I get that. But not everyone gets lost in it. Most people don't get lost in that. The average person, middle-class person that makes a decent salary, that can support his family comfortably, isn't running after the next dollar. He's not trying to invest more money, build more companies, go crazy to make another dollar. He's happy where he is. What? So where does that discrepancy come from? Why is it that someone that has everything a person can imagine isn't happy?
Jealous of his neighbor, maybe, that who has more?
No, it might be something like they're actually Russians.
They're actually what?
The Russians. They're not abandoning. They'll do anything.
But why? But why? Why? Where does it come from?
Well, it comes from their narcissism. It comes from exactly.
In other words, what you're saying is fascinating. I was gonna use a different language, but I think maybe what you're saying is true. Maybe what you're saying brings out the point. They don't have a purpose or a goal they're trying to reach. They don't have a purpose in life.
Or maybe they actually have a negative purpose. I'm going to get everything.
Or maybe that's that unrealistic goal.
But that's not a purpose. That's not a goal you can achieve, because everything doesn't end. That's not a goal.
That's right.
That's a constantly moving goal. So it's not a real goal. In other words, I'm not saying that every goal can't move. You grow, you get older, your maturity level grows, and your goals grow. I'm not saying a goal can't grow, but this is a goal that has no limit.
Yes.
Let's put it this way: a person, what's the average question you ask someone in their older years? Are you happy with what you accomplished in life? Do you feel satisfied? Do you feel like you've gotten somewhere? You can have a person that has just enough to support himself and he's happy. Why? Because what's his goal in life? His goal in life is to have a family and to support them. That's his goal. That's what he sees his purpose in life to be a protector, a provider. And if he's able to do that, he's on top of the world, because he fulfilled his purpose in life.
I'd add one thing to that.
Yeah.
And that is that they would also have the satisfaction of having done the best they could.
In going towards a certain end game, a certain goal.
It's something. I remember Dale one time said that his father said, "Well, if you're going to be a Jew, be the best Jew you can be." And that's absolutely that. I mean, that's a goal that I think accompanies satisfaction. I knew a carpenter years and years and years ago, but this guy his hands were so skilled and he was so proud of of the work that he did, and he died in that sort of knowing that he did the best work he could do, and the work was absolutely fantastic. But there are people that can't do as much, and they don't try. They just go about the work as blah blah blah.
Also, why don't they have this? We spoke about yesterday: the will, the desire. Why are they not giving it all they got? Because they don't know where they're going, or because they don't know they don't know what they're trying to accomplish or where they're going. They have no desire because they have no end game. There's no purpose.
Exactly.
So if my end game is to be a tzaddik, that's my purpose. Then anything that stands in the way of that, in other words, anytime I have some sort of temptation, I'm going to feel like I'm not getting towards my end game. But if I have no delusion of ever becoming a tzaddik, in other words, I recognize that the purpose in my life is to struggle till the day I die, then I'm going to be happy. Why? Because I am, every time I succeed in the struggle, I am now fulfilling the purpose for which I was created, the purpose for which I'm here. You can have a job that is meant, you're a mediator. You're meant, or you're a doctor. Now, if you asked the doctor when he was growing up, would he want to cure all illnesses? What would he say? Of course. When the doctor's getting a paycheck, he may not want to do that because he'll be out of a job. The Rebbe would always tell doctors that they should, that would bless them. You don't want to lose your job, but your job should become preventative medicine. In other words, there shouldn't be any more illness. That's the world we want, the perfect world. And the only job of a doctor will be preventative medicine. How to prevent people from falling off buildings and cracking their skulls up, or any other type of thing you can prevent. But if I recognize that my purpose is to heal people, so when I see someone come in with an illness, I'm not broken by the fact that there's illness. Here I have another chance to help someone out. Yeah. Again, you're a mediator. Of course you want there to be peace in the world. You'll never be needed again. But as long as there's someone that needs mediation, you're going to tackle the challenge because this is what you see your purpose in life. You see your mission in life. You have the ability to bring two people together. That's a tremendous talent, tremendous blessing to have. So you're going to look at every difficulty that you face as an opportunity to do what you were created for, what you were meant to be. So the fact that you encounter challenges and struggles and strife is not going to bring you down. Now, if you're working towards a perfect world, so not every time there's an imperfection, you're going to be despondent. You're going to feel like a failure. But if that's not what you see the purpose as being, if you recognize your true place, that you're not going to be a tzaddik, you're only going to be a Beinani, you only strive to be a Beinani, then challenges make you happy. Because every time you live the Beinani life, you are one step closer to fulfilling the purpose for which you were created. People that are in prison, they find religion. Why? How do they end up in prison? The average person ends up in prison because they have no direction. They have no direction in life. If it's a financial crime, it's because they were just chasing after the dollar. Again, no purpose and no end game. They committed a violent crime. Again, they did. If you don't see the value in life, if you don't see the value in your own life or the person you hurt, there's no purpose. But then you're stuck in a place where the only way out, you can't get out of the walls. The only way out is out of yourself, is to find a purpose, to find a goal, to find meaning. We shouldn't have to end up in prison to find meaning or to find the purpose. Okay, well, I see I went over time. We'll pick up over here next week. No, the 24th of Shvat. Page 366 in.
Oh.
I discussed most of this orally. We didn't do it inside. There's still one more point I want to address.
Yeah, okay.
So.
All right, okay. That's 366. Okay. Yeah. Speaking about prison, are you still visiting? Are you still over there?
In El Gemental?
Yeah.
So I actually